This is Reframe, the podcast from the College of Education, Health, and Society on the campus of Miami University. In recent years, concussions have gained more and more media attention. However, there is still so much we don't know. So in this episode, we take a look at some of the work being done to explore the effects, the lasting repercussions, and the need to do more. Before she witnessed the aftermath herself, Megan Loftin, like many people, was unaware of what sustaining a serious concussion really meant, and just how traumatic the injury can actually be.
I ended up having a friend who sustained a concussion while skiing and ended up being incredibly serious. And he got pulled out of school and saw this really bad stuff happen. Even now, he struggles with voice issues, with seeing, and all of this stuff. And I knew him kind of before this happened, and seeing he was this really happy-go-lucky guy all the time. And then he had this injury, and I saw his personality change, and was like, there's something about this injury I feel like that we're not quite understanding. There's some sort of psychological aspect going on.
This experience fueled a passion to learn more, and it led Loftin to an original line of research focused on the ongoing psychological effects often triggered by such an injury. Now, she's on a mission. As a sport leadership graduate student, Loftin is exploring the academic and social lives of former athletes who were forced to quit high school and college sports after experiencing a serious concussion. Her research involves conducting in-depth interviews to gain a better understanding of what the injury is really like and what the experience has meant to each participant. It's a qualitative approach that could eventually lead to better concussion assessments and treatments, and it's already won her a finalist position in Miami's recent 3-minute thesis graduate student competition.
I want to change the way that we're treating athletes because I think we're missing that psychological aspect. I think there's so much research about the physical and return to play and all these things, which is fantastic and great. But I think we're missing a little bit of that psychologically, are these athletes, if they're dealing with irritability and depression and anxiety, if they're having those symptoms, are we treating that as well? Are we helping these individuals with that other side of the concussion that occurs?
Suffering a concussion has always been a potential risk of playing sports. This is not a new phenomenon. But what is new is the amount of attention increasingly surrounding their occurrence. Until fairly recently, concussions were seen as a bump or a ding. For decades, especially in light of the dominant cultural ideologies and masculinity-based stereotyping that still often pervades many sports today, many athletes often felt social pressure to simply, quote, walk it off or to tough it out. Medical science, however, is beginning to differ, and public opinion is swaying as well. Concussions have recently been reclassified as mild traumatic brain injuries, or MTBIs. And thanks to the pioneering research of neuropathologist Bennett Omalu, who first noticed that repeated MTBIs led to a degenerative brain disease he named chronic traumatic encephalopathy, many professionals, players, and fans now recognize the inherent danger. Here's Sam Morris, Miami University Sport Leadership and Management Clinical Professor.
The symptoms of chronic traumatic encephalopathy there's a distinct pattern of people who just essentially have they're beset suddenly, usually fairly suddenly, by memory problems and inability to control their emotions. So they have these sort of wild outbursts and erratic behaviors and unpredictable and uncharacteristic behaviors.
Morris teaches several ethics-related sports leadership courses at Miami, and he often focuses on the risks associated with athletics and coaching.
And so it's been an imperative of mine through that ethics course and through that module on youth sport in my other course to do a better job of helping our students fully understand and appreciate the knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. So it's been an initiative of mine to kind of broaden the knowledge base of our students about what MTBIs in sports are, what the likely outcomes are, and what you're truly risking.
At Miami, students will get this message in Morris's classes, and it's also an issue that EHS has consistently addressed through various interdisciplinary efforts, including a number of events organized by Miami faculty. For the past several years, for example, a variety of notable guests have shared their personal experiences and professional expertise surrounding sport-related head injuries. Last year, the Miami University Lecture Series invited Dr. Omalu, currently a professor of the University of California, Davis, to speak about his discovery of chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And during this year's Alan G. Ingham Memorial Lecture, University of Colorado Denver Associate Professor Sarah K. Fields spoke about the movie industry's unrealistic and blasé portrayal of concussions. Previously, the Departments of History, Psychology, and Kinesiology and Health also collaborated on a lecture series featuring former NFL rising star Chris Borland, who made national headlines and who was called the most dangerous man in football by ESPN after he suddenly and voluntarily quit after sustaining a head injury. Borland called his abrupt retirement a preemptive move to avoid brain damage, and a lot of people noticed. So, overall awareness is growing, but even so, many people still have a false sense of knowledge. Conceptually, the dangers of sport-related head injuries have entered the zeitgeist of mainstream culture. The message is, quote-unquote, out there, so to speak. And in general, the public at least claims to acknowledge the risks, even if many do not yet grasp the full significance.
The students have a sort of false sense of knowledge about what the risks of that truly are. Because so many of our students, when I talk about this, will say things to me like, well, we know what we signed up for. You know, you're saying, well, we know what we signed up for, and I kind of want to go, really? Because there's a team of medical researchers at Boston University who have been studying this for more than a decade now, and they don't know. It's like, they don't know the answers to these questions, and you're telling me that you do?
Throughout her research, Megan Loftin found similar trends among the former high school and college athletes that she's interviewed, until, that is, they learn the hard way. Many say they are unaware of the dangers of concussions until they sustain them, which then really open their eyes. Afterwards, many mentioned educating themselves to understand why a concussion is serious and the long-term consequences. And for Loftin, on both a professional and a personal level, this notion also resonates deeply. Long after her friend had experienced his brain injury on the slopes, and even after her concussion research at Miami had begun, she too experienced a serious sport-related head injury, which brought this harsh reality clearly into focus.
And then I got this concussion last semester, and it clicked for me. I felt like now I know really what it's like to have a concussion. So when I'm talking with, the people that I'm talking with now for my thesis, I feel like I have that insight that I didn't have before of what it's really like to feel what you're feeling, and that irritability and all of those physical and emotional and cognitive symptoms, and how much it impacts your life.
Her work now aims to bring this level of subjective understanding to everyone, especially to those on the other side, those of us who have luckily not gained this knowledge firsthand. And surprisingly, research from this perspective is starkly lacking. Currently, most sport-related concussion research is almost exclusively quantitative, which is helpful when measuring various return-to-play metrics or objectively assessing structural damage. However, it is far less able to target the psychological links between a history of concussions and depression, for example, or how physical symptoms can exacerbate a host of emotional symptoms that can last for years afterwards.
I think still if you haven't had a concussion, you don't really know or understand what it is. So that can still, that's a barrier. And how can you really help someone dealing with this if you don't quite know or understand what it is? Because that's just part of what a concussion is. It's so unique and whatnot.
So through her qualitative approach, Loftin is striving to overcome the disconnect between those who have experienced a concussion and the inadequate support system that still fails to perceive and therefore treat all sides of this injury.